Hi. So a while back I uploaded a video ranking all of Weird Al's albums and songs, and one song in particular stuck out to me, the Weird Al Show theme, reminding me that, oh yeah, the Weird Al Show is a thing, yeah. Now I'd probably not seen it since the DVD was released about 18 years ago. I don't remember much, so to remedy this, I've dusted off the now out of print DVD box set. First I watched the entire series with the commentaries, and then watched the series itself. So join me as I uncover what happened to the Weird Al Show. What the Weird Al Show is and what it's about.
Well, it's a Saturday morning show. It takes place 20 miles below the surface of the earth in a subterranean cave dwelling, and I live there with my best friend in the whole world, Harvey the Wonder Hamster, and I have a slew of celebrity guests and celebrity cameos and musical performances, and it's a wacky, zany, nutty time for all. Wow.
Sounds great.
Sounds really... Oh.
So in this show, Al plays a fictional version of himself. And the Al in this show, to put it bluntly, is a big self-centered jerk who needs life lessons drummed into his head every 15 seconds during each episode. Lessons like don't make promises you can't keep, or if your friend is nervous about performing a death-defying stunt on your TV show, encourage and support them instead of accusing them of ruining your show. Things like that. Al and his best friend, Harvey the Wonder Hamster, live in a split-level cave 20 miles below the surface of the earth. There's reoccurring characters like the Hooded Avenger, Cousin Corky, Val Brentwood Gal Spy, and Bobby the Inquisitive Boy, all of which help guide Al to learn his lesson and learn how to be a better person week after week after week after week after. The show also featured a bunch of TV show parodies, commercial parodies, and of course, music video parodies. And there was a number of celebrity guest appearances like Drew Carey, John Tesh, Alex Trebek, and if that wasn't enough, there was also musical guests such as Hanson, Bare Naked Ladies, Radish. Honestly, this sounds like a pretty fun time, right? Well, it is, and despite the network interfering and downgrading the experience for both adults and kids, I do love and adore this show. So, how did it come to be? When selling a television show to a major network, remember to compromise!
This is something you've been trying to get on the air for 13 years?
Yeah, we started pitching it sometime around 1984, and it's gone through various stages, incarnations, and in fact, it wasn't until this year it became an educational show, because until then it was this kind of amorphous sketch comedy variety show, and we were pitching CBS, and they said, well, you know, this year we're only buying educational programming. And I said, did I tell you it's an educational show? It's an educational show.
So a mandate from the FCC came out that year that required all networks to play 3 hours of educational content on Saturday mornings. And hey, incorporating educational lessons into a sketch comedy variety show fronted by Weird Al himself seems like a worthwhile compromise, no? Well, with that compromise, it was time to make a show. And despite Al being very vocal about the fact that he didn't want to do a carbon copy of Pee-wee's Playhouse and didn't want everybody drawing comparisons, Wayne White was hired to design the set. The same guy who designed the set for Paul Rubin's show. But what solidified this was CBS's own press release for the show, calling the show an upbeat comedic live-action mixed media series in the spirit of Pee-wee's Playhouse, starring Weird Al Yankovic. Nevertheless, with a beautifully designed set, scripts in hand, it was time to start filming a show. Surely this was going to go well without any major speed bumps, right? Sometimes compromising with the TV network really means selling your soul! So initially, Al set out to make a show that appealed to both adults and kids, and the material that him and the writers had prepared was specifically catered to 10 to 12-year-olds. However, the network had envisioned a show that appealed to 3 to 6-year-olds. The mission statement for the show states, the educational objective of the Weird Al Show will be to teach children how to develop a positive self-esteem by encouraging viewers to think for themselves, set goals, and celebrate the individual differences in everyone. I remember that phrase, think for themselves, because, oh, the irony. Someone very high up at the network must have been scared to death that someone from the FCC was going to tune into the show for 10 seconds, and if in those 10 seconds an educational message wasn't being reinforced somehow, that heads were going to roll. It is honestly a miracle that the Fat Man cartoons even exist. One of the few segments in the entire show where the educational message wasn't being reinforced at all. Piles of notes coming in from the network as they were shooting an episode. These notes included things like not being able to call the miners in episode 2 barbarians, or like in episode 5 where they had to force an explanation of what a PhD is.
Bobby, a PhD is a kind of degree that you earn in college after you've mastered a subject.
Duh, I'm not a moron.
Okay.
Another thing they were forced to do was explain every single joke so that a 3-year-old could understand. Al and the crew operated under the idea that kids were smart and were able to figure out the lesson for themselves. However, the network seemed to be operating under the idea that kids are stupid and won't learn anything unless you remind them constantly. So much for think for themselves. Because of this, the show unfortunately became the hit you over the head repeatedly school of education, as Al puts it. But the icing on the cake is the network's very own slogan for the promotional campaign that year.
Think, CBS Kids!
When really it was more like,
Think CBS Kids. Think. We don't think you can think.
But think anyway.
Exactly.
it got to the point that while they were filming an episode, the network notes became so egregious that Al himself didn't even know what the lesson was for the episode. Filming would wrap on an episode and notes would come in and say, no, the lesson is supposed to be this. They had to patch things up with a bunch of voiceovers and editing tricks to make the lesson what the network wanted.
Geez, that information might have been a little more useful to me yesterday.
So basically during production, Al's life was shoot 2 episodes a day and then be up all night addressing network notes. Oh boy. And this resulted in a more manic Al than most of the scripts called for.
Once again, things that could have been brought to my attention yesterday!
It's sleep deprivation, baby. But Al and the guys weren't going to let that slide completely. One of the fixes they came up with was starting each episode with a paper card, spelling out the lesson for the episode, and then in protest, they decided to have Billy West read the card as loud and obnoxiously as possible before the card gets aggressively ripped in half leading into the episode. And even more loud and obnoxious Billy West voiceovers were added before every commercial break.
Will I ever stop this annoying shouting?
I mean, hey, it was already obnoxious that they had to do this in the first place, so, go for broke. So knowing all of this, it should be no surprise that a lot of bits were left on the cutting room floor. Like an episode of Fred Huggins where Papa and Baby Booley off themselves, which may have been the right choice. Another thing left on the cutting room floor is the infamous Star Wars sketch, where Al blue screened himself into various scenes from the movie, and he played Luke Skywalker's annoying little brother Ernie.
I was going to Tachi Station to pick up some power converters.
To be fair, this wasn't the network's fault. It was actually Mark Hamill who axed the idea, because at the time he was tired of being pigeonholed as the Star Wars guy. But the most notorious restriction that the network had on Al and the writers was they didn't want anything in the show that was considered bad imitatable behavior, which includes things like, breaking a plate over your head, which somehow ended up in the show, among other things. An interesting thing about this, though, the experience in creating the show actually inspired the album title and cover of his album in 1999.
Well, after doing a whole year of Saturday morning programming, I wanted to do something that was bad imitatable behavior. It was like drummed into me, like, don't do anything that like kids can imitate and injure themselves with. Like, okay, don't break a plate on your head. Somebody might do that. All right. But now I'm not doing Saturday morning anymore, so I'm running with scissors once again.
Okay, maybe he's being a little cheeky there. But fun fact, there's a bit during the home movie segment of the episode, One for the Record Books, where Al is running down a track, and Al says during the commentary for that episode that it is the true inspiration for that album. He even said that he envisioned everybody laying on the ground with scissors protruding out of them, but that would obviously never in a million years be approved by the network, so he recycled that idea for the album liner notes. R.I.P. Ruben. Another interesting bit of trivia is Seth MacFarlane actually auditioned as a writer for the show. Needless to say, his material was considered too edgy for a children's show, seeing how he was legitimately pitching ideas for a little show called Family Guy. So the Weird Al show could have very well been the Tracy Ullman show for Family Guy, as Al puts it. And no, sorry Mike, Seth could not be reached for comment. Another interesting celebrity connection that I learned from these commentaries is back in the early 90s, Al was hosting a brainstorming session for the show, and small world, among the talent in that session was Bob Odenkirk, Saul Goodman himself, and it was actually him that came up with the names Papa and Baby Booley. The puppets had originally been named Gorm, but for legal reasons, Al couldn't use that. So late one night, Al calls up Bob, waking him from a dead sleep, saying, "Bob, quick, I need another name for Gorm." Booley. Thanks, bye. And remember when I said there was a bunch of celebrity guests? Well, on top of everything else, Al was in charge of booking them on the show. And famously, The Weird Al Show was filmed next door to where The Tonight Show with Jay Leno was being filmed. And in a pinch, Al would be trolling the hallways, asking celebrities booked on Leno if they had a few minutes to make a small appearance on the show. And famously, that's how he met Drew Carey, and the two have been friends ever since. So after all that stress and sleep deprivation, Al and the crew had in their hands a finished show. So what now? Sometimes it's up to you, and only you, to promote your show. So the next logical step is to promote the show, build hype, to drive attention to it so people watch it, right? Right? Well, that's not what CBS did. I guess their only real aggressive marketing was running commercials for the show on Saturday mornings when nobody was watching. That's right, no commercials ran for their Saturday morning lineup during any other time slot during the week. To add insult to injury, the network decided to put a 2-hour news block right in the middle of their Saturday morning lineup. And I guarantee that 5 or 6 kids actually watching bailed. What kid wants to sit through 2 hours of news on Saturday morning? Genius. And in many markets, what did they play right after? The Weird Al Show. That's another thing. When I say many markets transition from the news to the Weird Al Show, the keyword's many, because nationwide there was no set schedule of when the show was going to air. Some areas it aired at 7:30, while others it aired at 11:30, so on and so forth. This made the show impossible to promote. It baffles me just how much CBS micromanaged the production of this show, yet when it came to enforcing a standard lineup for all their markets, they said, well, do what you want, I guess. Al pretty much did all the heavy lifting himself to get word out about this show, doing interviews for articles and TV shows, and integrating an announcement for it during his live concert tour that year.
I don't know how many of you people know it, but there's something on TV Saturday mornings called The Weird Al Show.
Al is doing everything that he can to draw attention to it and build hype around it, but there's only so much one man can do. But let's be fair, it's not like the network did absolutely nothing to promote it. There were commercials airing on Saturday mornings, and there was this promotional pamphlet that boasts about how millions will tune in and will increase Al's album sales by millions. Okay, commercials that nobody saw in a pamphlet. Needless to say, the show was canceled after one season, as was CBS's entire Saturday morning lineup. Here's what a CBS executive says after the fact. Marvin Frank, a CBS executive in charge of lobbying efforts, said the network invested heavily in acquiring and promoting the programs, and it is disappointed that they haven't succeeded. And then the next sentence in the article immediately contradicts what that executive says. Alan Wartella, the Dean of Communications program at the University of Texas at Austin, said CBS's woes might have had a lot to do with insufficient promotion of the Saturday morning shows and the network's decision to insert CBS News Saturday morning in the middle of the lineup. And it's honestly really sad because, I mean, there was such high hopes for this show, and had it become a huge success, Surge Licensing, the same company that did merchandising for the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, had signed on to do merchandising for the Weird Al Show, which in itself is enough to bring tears to the eyes of the hardcore fans. Just imagine an entire line of Weird Al action figures. Now, I personally know many collectors of Al memorabilia that are just foaming at the mouth at just the thought of this. Also, kind of ironic that the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles TV show was canceled the year before, but in the end, I think it's all for the best, you know, because had the show had been picked up for another season, Al and the crew would have to endure another year of this hell that they were in. But despite everything that happened, Al and everyone involved made a very fun and entertaining show that I absolutely adore. There's a lot of great stuff in here. In fact, it was fans that kept the show alive and well after it was canceled, whether it be through fan websites or the tape trading circles exposing the show to a new audience. The show lived on, and it was because of the fans that it got the attention of Shout Factory, and they put out the DVD in 2006. I remember that being a huge deal when it happened, and even though it's long out of print, the show continues to live on various streaming platforms to this day. And I say you can thank the fans for that as well. Big thanks to Dave Rossi over at Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast for his help in this video. And thanks to you for watching. We are so close over here to hitting 1,000 subs, which is just mind-blowing. But anyway, thanks again. Hopefully it won't be several months before our next upload. And yeah, we'll see you then. Bye, guys.